fingers on the dinner table, the wife who loved to deeply hate dreamers. You're listening to inspiring life stories where calm voices meet powerful lessons. Close your eyes, relax your mind, and drift into stories that heal your heart. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll, subscribe, share, and let someone else feel inspired too. Because one story can change a life, maybe even yours. Episode 1, The Silent Dinner. Section 1, The Candlelit Table. Emma sat at the dinner table, the warm glow of the single candle between them failing to warm the chill that had settled over her heart. The clinking of cutlery felt heavier tonight, echoing through the silent kitchen like accusations. The roast chicken on her plate had grown cold, but she didn't care. Each bite would have been swallowed with bitterness anyway. Across from her, Daniel was scrolling through his phone, a subtle smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. Emma's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. She had learned long ago that questions asked too soon were weapons that often backfired. Instead, she forced a polite smile and placed her hands neatly in her lap. Her mind drifted to the nights they had spent here, laughing, planning, dreaming. How those same walls had witnessed whispered confessions and declarations of love. How the same table had once been a sanctuary. Tonight, it felt like a courtroom, and she was the accused, except the crime had been committed by someone she loved. A faint vibration on the table made her stomach twist. Daniel's phone lit up with a name she had seen too many times lately, Leela. Emma's hand shook slightly as she reached for her wine glass, letting the crimson liquid catch the candlelight like her tears might if she allowed them to fall. But she didn't, not yet. Section 2, The First Crack. You've been quiet tonight, Daniel said, finally looking up. His tone was casual, but Emma heard the hesitation behind the words. Just tired, she replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, returning to his phone. That small gesture, so trivial, stabbed her more than any accusation could. She remembered their wedding night, how he had held her hand across this very table and whispered promises she believed would last forever. Those promises had turned into shadows. She wanted to confront him, to demand truth, to make him feel the sting she carried every day. But the fear of shattering the fragile remnants of her dignity kept her silent. Instead, she pushed her plate away, pretending to take another bite. The phone buzzed again, and this time, she could no longer ignore it. The name flashed, Leela. Her chest tightened, the air seemed thinner, and a single tear slipped down her cheek. She hastily wiped it with the back of her hand, hoping Daniel wouldn't notice. But he did notice. He looked up, eyes narrowing slightly. Is something wrong? Emma forced a smile. No, just tired, she repeated. The room fell silent again, heavy with unspoken truths. Section 3, Memories and Shadows. Emma's mind wandered back to when they had first met. Daniel had been charming, attentive, everything she thought a husband should be. To love him with a depth she didn't even know existed within her, giving herself completely, ignoring the small warnings and uneasy feelings that sometimes flickered in her heart. But love, she was learning, could be blind, and sometimes it was cruel. She remembered the nights she had stayed awake, waiting for him to return from work, hoping for a smile, a word, a sign that he loved her as fiercely as she loved him. Those nights had multiplied into years of silent waiting, of sacrifices, of bending herself into shapes that could fit someone else's happiness. Now, the man across the table was a stranger, his phone more interesting than her presence, his eyes distant. She remembered the laughter they had shared here, the playful teasing. But warmth, tonight, none of it existed, only coldness. Her tear fell again, unnoticed, as she remembered that love could turn into pain without warning. Section 4, The Unseen Betrayal. Daniel stood, pretending to answer a call in the hallway. Emma could hear the soft sounds of laughter, not the kind shared with her, but another woman's laughter. She pressed her forehead against the table, feeling the weight of betrayal settle like a stone in her chest. She had imagined confronting him, imagining dramatic fights, tears, arguments. But reality was different. Pain was quieter, sharper, insidious. It lived in small details, the laugh she hadn't heard in years, the way he avoided her eyes, the subtle way the world she built together no longer included her. Her phone buzzed, another message from him, though she hadn't even checked hers in hours. A casual ping, a notification that seemed trivial, but she knew it wasn't. She didn't need to see the content to understand. The betrayal was already written across the space between them, across the cold dinner table, across the distance in his eyes. She thought of leaving, she thought of standing up, walking out, never coming back. but something in her froze. The years of love, of shared dreams, of hope that he would change, kept her rooted. Section 5. The night settles when Daniel returned. Emma didn't look at him. She kept her gaze on the plate before her, though the food had lost all appeal. He slid into his seat, oblivious to the silent storm raging inside her. "Are you going to eat?" he asked casually. Emma shook her head slightly. "Not hungry," she murmured. He shrugged, returning to his phone. The clock ticked loudly, marking each second like a hammer. Emma felt every second press into her chest, every second a reminder of what she had lost. Finally, she whispered to herself, barely audible, "You're gone, even though you sit right there." The candle flickered, shadows dancing across the room. The warmth was gone. The laughter, the love, the trust, all gone. Emma finished her glass of wine, leaving the untouched plate and the cold candlelight as monuments to a love that had crumbled. In the quiet of the night, she realized something she didn't want to admit. Sometimes the person you love most is also the person who destroys you quietly without even looking back. Episode 2. The text message that broke her. Section 1. The morning after the sunlight crept through the half-closed blinds, painting slats of gold across the bedroom. Emma awoke to the sound of her own breathing, uneven and shallow, as though her chest were a fragile instrument about to snap. She glanced at the empty side of the bed and felt the hollow ache of absence. Daniel had left early, as usual, muttering about meetings and deadlines, the casual tone. The normalcy stung worse than any argument could. She sat up slowly, her body stiff from hours of restless sleep, and rubbed her temples. The previous night's dinner haunted her, the candle flickering in silence, the messages, the betrayal, the realization that the man she loved with all her heart was slipping away into someone else's arms. The bedroom clock ticked loudly. She reached for the nightstand, her hands trembling slightly, and grabbed Daniel's phone. The screen lit up automatically. "Can't wait to see you tonight. My love, Leela." Her stomach turned. Her knees buckled. She fell back onto the bed, clutching the phone like a jagged piece of glass. 7 years of love, trust, sacrifices reduced to a single message on her glowing screen. She remembered their first apartment, how they had danced in the kitchen at midnight to a song they didn't even like. She remembered holding his hand when he cried after losing his father. She remembered the way he whispered, "I'm yours forever, forever." And now, forever was a lie. Section 2. The weight of betrayal. Emma stayed on the bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, letting the shock and disbelief wash over her. She tried to make sense of it, to find some logical explanation, but none existed. She knew the truth in her bones. Daniel was in love with someone else, someone who had been quietly filling the space she thought was theirs alone. She thought about confronting him, yelling, throwing the phone at him, demanding answers, but the thought of opening her heart again to the man who had already wounded it seemed unbearable. Her body shook as the memories flooded her, the anniversary they had forgotten together, the nights she had cried silently because she knew he wasn't really listening. And now this proof that she had been invisible for months, maybe years. She walked to the bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. The reflection was pale, haunted. Her hair was disheveled, eyes red from crying, lips pressed tight with unspoken rage. "You're a fool," she whispered to her reflection. How did you not see it coming? But even as she said it, part of her still clung desperately to hope, a cruel whisper that maybe he would apologize, maybe he would explain, maybe she could forgive again. Section 3. Silent confrontation. When Daniel returned that evening, Emma was waiting in the living room, phone in hand, heart racing. He didn't notice at first. He hung his coat, shrugged off his shoes, and poured himself a glass of wine. "Long day?" he asked, smiling. Casually, Emma's hands tightened around the phone. "We need to talk." His smile faltered slightly. "About what?" She held the phone toward him. The message from Leela stared at him from the screen like a judge delivering a verdict. Daniel froze. His lips parted and he tried to speak, but no words came. "This is what you were doing, isn't it?" she asked quietly, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her heart. "While I waited at home, while I loved you, while I trusted you, you were sending her this." He looked down, shame creeping into his expression. "Emma, it's not what you think. It is what I think," she said, tears slipping down her cheeks. "It's exactly what I think." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument they had ever had. Emma's entire body ached with betrayal. She felt the floor shift beneath her, as if the home itself had rejected the lies that had been told within its walls. Section 4. memories of what was lost. Emma wandered to the bedroom, unable to remain in the living room with him. She needed space, needed air, needed to let the storm rage without him. She remembered the little things, how he always knew her favorite coffee, how he would bring her flowers for no reason, how he had been her partner, her friend, her confidant. And now, those memories were poisoned by the knowledge that they had been built on deception. She picked up their wedding photo from the bedside table. Their smile seemed fake now, hollow echoes of what had once been love. She pressed her hand to the glass, wishing she could reach through, touch the man she thought she knew, and somehow make him understand the magnitude of the heartbreak he had caused. But understanding would not undo the betrayal. It would not bring back the nights she had cried silently, the mornings she had woken alone in his presence, the feeling of being invisible in the life she had shared with him. Section 5, the first step toward goodbye. By the time night fell, Emma had made a quiet decision. She would not scream. She would not beg. She would not watch him continue to love another while pretending to love her. Instead, she would leave. She would reclaim herself, even if it meant walking out on the man she had loved more than life itself. She packed a small bag, taking only what she could carry. Each item felt like a symbol, a page of their shared life that she was folding up and setting aside. A scarf, a book, a photograph. She touched them gently, whispered goodbye. She left the bag by the door. As she sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, she realized something terrible. This heartbreak would not end. It would linger, a shadow over every memory of love, every thought of trust. She placed the phone back on the nightstand, not to check messages, not to call him, but to leave it as a monument to the truth. Emma lay back, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming freely now. She knew that in the morning, the world would continue, but for her, something essential had died. And deep down, she understood she would never be the same. Episode 3, The Confrontation, Section 1. The storm approaches. Rain fell relentlessly that evening, hammering against the windows as if the sky itself mourned with Emma. The rhythmic drumming on the roof matched the thundering of her heart. She sat in the living room, wrapped in a thin blanket, staring at Daniel, who moved around the house with a casual ease that only deepened the wound in her chest. Her hands clutched the phone. The words from Leela still burned in her mind. Can't wait to see you tonight. The love she tried to breathe, tried to compose herself, tried to find even a sliver of the woman who had loved him with complete trust. But she could feel that person slipping away, leaving only the hollow shell of a betrayed wife. Daniel, she called softly, her voice trembling but firm. We need to talk. He paused mid-step, glancing at her with a half-smile, as if expecting a casual conversation, but this was no casual conversation. Section 2, the question that shatters. Emma stood, gripping the edge of the coffee table for support. Her eyes, swollen from days of sleepless nights, met his, seeking a truth she feared but needed. Who is Leela? She asked, the words barely above a whisper. Daniel froze, his glass of water trembling in his hand. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Silence filled the room like a living thing. Emma, it's not what you think, he started, but even he didn't sound convinced. She shook her head. Don't lie. Not this time. I've seen the messages. I've heard the laughter. I've felt the distance you've created between us. Don't insult me with excuses. Her words cut through the room, sharp as glass. For a moment, the world outside the window seemed to still. The rain softened, the thunder paused, as if holding its breath for the inevitable truth. Daniel's shoulders slumped, his defenses crumbled. He wanted to speak, to explain, to apologize. But no explanation could undo the years of betrayal, the nights of silent tears, the mornings he had woken alone even when he was beside her. Section 3, Memories of Love and Pain. Emma walked slowly toward the window, her gaze lost in the streaked glass. She remembered their first apartment, how they had danced to music that wasn't even playing, how his hand had always found hers even in the darkest moments. She remembered comforting him through the loss of his father, staying awake through nights of sorrow and despair, whispering that everything would be all right. And now all of that seemed meaningless, nothing but memories twisted by lies. She turned back to him, her voice trembling but strong. Do you even realize what you've done? The life we built together, all gone because your heart wasn't yours to give. Daniel tried to reach out to her, to take her hand, to bridge the chasm he had created. She recoiled instinctively. You don't get to touch me, she whispered. Not now. Not ever again, maybe. Section 4, the final plea. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the walls, wind howling like the anger and grief that filled the room. Daniel's voice cracked as he finally spoke the truth, or what he thought was truth. "Emma, I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I didn't know." She laughed bitterly, the sound echoing off the walls like broken glass. "Didn't know, or didn't care." Her hands trembled, but she stood tall, the tears streaming freely now. "I spent years giving you everything, my love, my trust, my life, and all you gave me was betrayal." He looked at her, desperation in his eyes, but she had already made up her mind. The betrayal had taken root too deeply. Love, she realized, could not survive lies like these. Section 5, the door closes. Emma turned to leave the room, her footsteps echoing in the empty house. Daniel called after her, but she didn't stop. She had already left a part of herself behind, the part that had believed in forever. She went to the bedroom, packed a small bag with essentials, and left a note on the bedside table. "I loved you enough to forgive 1,000 times. Loved myself enough to walk away once." Her heart ached as she closed the door behind her. She knew that walking out didn't erase the years they had shared, the memories that would haunt her, or the love that had once been pure. But it was the only choice left. Outside, the rain fell harder. She walked into the night, the city lights blurred by tears, the cold wind biting at her skin. She didn't know where she was going or how she would heal. But she knew one thing: the woman who had cried silently for years would no longer wait for someone. Who didn't he deserve her love? And somewhere deep inside, Emma realized the truth she had avoided for too long. Some wounds never fully heal, and some hearts remain broken forever. Episode 4, The Goodbye Letter, Section 1. The quiet before the storm, the apartment was silent. Eerily so, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Emma moved carefully through the rooms, touching items she had once cherished, the photograph of their honeymoon, the delicate scarf Daniel had given her on their first anniversary, the old journal filled with memories she had once believed would last forever. Each object carried a weight of betrayal now. Each memory, once a source of comfort, now cut her heart like glass. The very air seemed heavy with the knowledge of what she was about to do, the ultimate act of self-preservation in a love that had betrayed her. She sat at the kitchen table, a pen trembling in her hand. On the table lay a single sheet of paper, blank yet impossibly full of meaning. She took a deep breath, trying to summon the strength to write the words she had rehearsed for hours, days, weeks. Words that would change the course of her life forever. Section 2, Writing the Heartbreak Daniel. "I loved you enough to forgive 1,000 times. I loved you enough to stay when hope was all I had. But I loved myself enough to walk away once." Emma paused, her hands shaking. Tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink, but she continued. "You were my world. I built my life around you, my dreams around us, my every breath around the love I thought we shared. And yet, in silence, you chose another. You chose lies over love, deception over honesty, selfishness over the woman who gave you everything." She paused again, staring out the window at the city lights reflected in the wet streets. The rain had returned, tapping against the glass like a mournful drum. She thought of every whispered promise, every stolen kiss, every night she had stayed awake for him, holding him in her heart even as he wandered elsewhere. "I cannot stay. I cannot continue to give my love to someone who has abandoned it. I will carry our memories with me, but they will no longer chain me to a life built on deceit. This is goodbye, Daniel. Not because I do not love you, but because love alone is not enough." She folded the letter carefully, placing it on the kitchen counter. Her wedding ring lay beside it, a silent testament to vows broken and trust shattered. Section 3, Packing the Past. Emma moved through the apartment, packing a small bag with the essentials she would need to leave. She didn't take everything. She didn't want to carry the burden of the life that had been destroyed. But she took enough to start anew. Each item she packed was symbolic. The scarf he had given her, folded neatly, the journal, closed gently, the photograph of their first vacation together, carefully wrapped in tissue. She traced her fingers over each item one last time, whispering goodbyes to the life that would no longer exist. She didn't look back as she left the bedroom. She didn't glance at the living room or the empty dining table where they had shared so many meals and memories. She had made her decision and nothing could reverse it. Section 4, The Last Glance. As she reached the door, Emma paused, taking a final look at the apartment. It smelled like him, like home, like love and betrayal intertwined. She pressed her hand to the door frame, feeling the weight of every tear she had shed in silence. Every whispered hope that had been crushed. Daniel's voice came from the living room, hesitant, almost pleading, "Emma, wait, please." She didn't turn, she didn't respond. She simply stepped into the hallway, bag in hand. Heart pounding, tears streaming down her face. The echo of his words followed her, but they could not reach her anymore. Section 5. Into the night outside, the city stretched endlessly before her. Indifferent to her pain, the rain-slicked streets reflected neon lights, blurring into streaks of color that seemed almost surreal. She walked without direction, letting the tears flow freely, each step a release, each breath a declaration of independence from a love that had betrayed her. For the first time in years, she was alone, truly alone, and the loneliness was both terrifying and liberating. She knew that the path ahead would be difficult, that memories would haunt her, that the ache of betrayal would linger. But she also knew that she had made the only choice left, to leave the life that had been poisoned, to step into a world where she could begin again, even if the pain would never fully fade. And in the darkness of the night, Emma whispered to herself, bitter but necessary truth: some love ends not with reconciliation, but with the courage to walk away. Episode 5, The Emptiness That Remains. Section 1, A Life in Shadows. Months had passed since Emma had walked out of the apartment that had been both her sanctuary and her prison. The city had continued its indifferent rhythm, lights flashing, cars roaring, people moving through their own lives, oblivious to the devastation in her heart. Emma had found a small apartment on the edge of the city, furnished with only the bare necessities. There was no warmth in the place, no traces of the life she had left behind. Each morning, she woke to the harsh sunlight streaming through the blinds, a reminder that the world kept moving even when hers had stopped. She worked, she ate, she slept, but the hollow ache never left. Every sound, every scent, every fleeting memory reminded her of Daniel, the love that had been real and the betrayal that had made it all meaningless. Some nights, she would sit by the window, staring at the distant skyline, imagining him in the apartment she had abandoned. Was he happy with her absence, or did he feel the sting of the void she left behind? She did not want to know, yet her heart betrayed her with a longing that hurt more than the betrayal itself. Section 2, Haunting Memories. It was in the quiet moments, the ones where the city's noise faded, that Emma felt the weight of her grief most intensely. She would remember the laughter they had shared, not the laughter that was fake or forced, but the genuine, unguarded moments that had once filled the room with warmth. She remembered the candlelit dinners, the late-night whispers, the way Daniel used to brush her hair back gently, the subtle affection in his eyes. And with each memory, the pain returned sharper, more acute than before. Her friends tried to console her, offering platitudes and advice. Time heals, they said. You'll find someone else, but Emma knew better. The truth she had learned was harsher. Love did not always end in redemption. Some hearts, no matter how open, destined to carry grief forever. She would walk past couples in the street, clutching their hands, sharing secret smiles, and her chest would tighten, a physical ache that reminded her that she had loved deeply and that love had been taken away. Section 3, The Letter She Never Sent. One evening, Emma sat at a small writing desk she had purchased for herself, a pen in hand, blank sheet of paper in front of her. She wanted to write to Daniel one last time, to pour her grief, her anger, her longing into words that would never reach him. Daniel, I carry you in my heart every day, and yet I know I cannot return. I have tried to move on, to forget, to rebuild, but the memory of what we had, and what you took from me, haunts every step. I loved you with everything I had, and you chose to betray me. That love will never return, but neither will I. I exist now in the shadows of what was, and I will remain here with the ache of your absence always inside me. She crumpled the paper and tossed it into the trash. The act of writing did not relieve her pain, it only solidified it. Some words, some grief could not be resolved with ink and paper. Section 4, A Hollow Freedom. Emma's days became a pattern of hollow freedom. She could live without Daniel, could breathe without his presence, could eat without sharing meals with him. Yet the freedom was not joy. It was the emptiness that follows a loss so profound that even the world's beauty feels muted. She occasionally passed the streets she and Daniel had walked together, seeing his favorite cafe, the park where they had first kissed, the little bookstore he used to love. Each place was a knife twisting in her chest. The city itself seemed to mock her, alive and indifferent. While her heart remained frozen in grief, even the idea of love again seemed impossible. She knew she could not trust, could not open herself, could not risk the pain of another betrayal. Some lessons she realized were too harsh to unlearn. Section 5, the final acknowledgement. One rainy night, Emma returned to the apartment building she had once shared with Daniel. She stood outside, gazing at the windows, imagining the life that continued inside without her. She realized then that love could be a cruel teacher and heartbreak its permanent lesson. Her eyes filled with tears, not of anger, but of acceptance. She would never see Daniel again, never hear his voice, never share her life with him. She would carry the weight of their years together, both the love and the betrayal, as a part of herself forever. Turning away, Emma walked into the night, the rain soaking her hair, her clothes, her soul. The world continued around her, indifferent. She did not expect it to stop. She did not expect solace. She only moved forward, a ghost of the woman who had once believed in forever. And in the depth of her sorrow, she understood the final bitter truth. Some love stories do not end with healing or redemption. Some hearts remain broken forever, and that is their reality.